Now let's cross to the garden lobby of Holyrood now and speak to our panel of MSPs. From the SNP, we have Jim Fairlie. Craig Hoy is the chairman of the Scottish Conservative Party. We've got Labour's Carol Mochan. And from the Greens, we've got Gillian Mackay. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you very much for joining me. Let's just pick up on the care service. First of all, Jim Fairlie, the government bill published yesterday, but there has been a lot of criticism that this is an expensive power grab. What would you say to your opponents?
I have to say I'm actually shocked that people are thinking that it's an expensive power grab. The Fairlie report quite clearly said that the expansion of the Fairlie report, the consultation quite clearly said that people want to see this happening, and the Scottish Government are making it happen. It's a person-centred, it's a human rights approach. It gives people the right to be cared for in their home by their own families, and I'm struggling to understand why people think that this is something to be concerned about. I've heard
the example is Police Scotland. I mean, your opponents say Police Scotland has been beset by problems since the centralisation in 2013.
Yeah, well, we're at the early stages of actually setting this the National Care Service up, and I've heard some of the concerns that you said earlier on. But bear in mind, when the National Health Service was set up, people didn't want it. They said this was a bad thing. I couldn't think or imagine now a Scotland without a National Health Service, and I am confident that we'll get this right, and the National Care Service will be as embedded in Scottish society as the National Health Service is just now.
Well, Craig Hoy from the Conservatives, I mean, there's no reason that this should be beset by problems like Police Scotland. Why should it be similar? Why can't you get behind this?
Look, social care in Scotland is in crisis at the moment. That's something that Audit Scotland has recognised. And Audit Scotland has said that we cannot wait for a National Care Service in order to deal with those clear issues that we're facing across social care. But let's not forget what the Scottish Government are proposing. They're proposing to spend up to £1.3 billion on the creation of a new bureaucracy to run social care in Scotland. It's in the figures that you released yesterday. And spending £1.3 billion on pen pushers and bureaucrats that should be spent on bringing people into social care at the front line, I think is a huge misplaced priority.
What is going to be spent? What is going to be spent on is giving frontline workers a better terms and conditions. It's going to be done on the basis of making sure that the investments that we make.
Jim can try and talk over me, but he cannot talk over the issue. The issue is that the bill yesterday identified 700 additional civil servants to run this new service at a potential cost of additional £1.3 billion. We want a local care service that is in local control. This is a power grab, and it's a grab on the power that should really be with Scotland's local authorities.
Well, Carol Mochan from Labour, it's the same question to you. Your colleague Jackie Baillie has called this is nothing less than the biggest power grab in the history of Holyrood. But what is wrong with trying to have a more centralised, coherent approach?
Well, I think this is such a missed opportunity. I am not impressed at all with what has come forward. And Jim Fairlie clearly doesn't understand what has been put forward by the Scottish Government. This was an opportunity to make sure there is local accountability for local government and for communities. It was an opportunity to talk about the pay, terms and conditions of the workforce, which we know is so central to continuing a national care service for people. And while we have a profit-driven system, then we cannot really talk about how we maximise and make the best opportunity of a national care service for all. So this is overall a very big missed opportunity by the Scottish Government here in Holyrood. And Jackie Baillie is quite right to call it a power grab.
Do you want government-owned care homes then?
I want to make sure that profit is driven out of the National Care Service and that we have a service that is accountable to its
profit driven out completely, no private care homes at all in Scotland?
I think that what we want to do is make sure that we drive the profit out of the National Care Service.
Well, Gillian Mackay from the Greens, you are indeed in favour, your party is in favour of a National Care Service. Would you want to see profit driven out like it seems Labour do?
I think profit should be driven out of care altogether. The National Care Service is an important step towards establishing care that puts people at the centre of it. That includes the lived experience of people who are receiving care at the moment and the input of workers. So I'm looking forward to engaging with Unite and with many other stakeholders on this issue as the bill progresses through Parliament to make sure that we hear everyone's views.
So just to be clear, Gillian, that would be government-owned care homes and no privately owned care homes in Scotland?
there's a mix of care at the moment in Scotland. There are plenty of very good specialist third sector providers as well, and I think some of the National Care Service should be emboldening those third sector providers as well as driving profit out of the system.
Okay, let me turn, Jim Fairlie, to the issue of strike action on the railways. Your party has been critical of the UK government, but your government seemed to take a back seat on the train when it came to resolving this dispute with the ASLEF over the emergency timetable.
I think what you'll find is that the Scottish Government did the exact right thing and allowed the employers and the unions to have that discussion.
But you're ultimately employer, you control the books.
You nationalised them.
The right thing to do at that point was to allow the employers and the unions to have that discussion. But hold the point, Andrew. We've actually got a position just now where our union, our government and the employers are actually working with the union to find a resolution. On the other hand, what's happening in Westminster is they're washing their hands. And there's another irony here.
Hold on a wee second. We don't have much time. Craig Hoy, I want to hear from you. The government are essentially washing their hands of this, your MSP colleague in SNP is saying.
No, not at all. The UK government is standing back to allow the RMT to negotiate with Network Rail and those rail providers. And what we would say is we want those negotiations to continue. We want to reach a fair pay settlement for rail workers. But it is deeply regrettable that the unions have decided to walk away from the negotiation table and to go on strike. And I think it's equally regrettable that Anna Sarwar decided yesterday to stand on the picket line rather than to stand on the side of hard-pressed passengers who were trying to get to work.
Carol Mochan, your party seems to be all over the place, and this Anna Sarwar out in the picket lines. Sir Keir Starmer hiding in his office, it seems, according to the Tories. What are Labour's position on the RMT and strikes?
I want to be absolutely clear that Scottish Labour are absolutely behind the workers on this issue. We have not ran away from anything. We have been out supporting the workers. The passengers, if you look at the data that's come in, passengers are fully behind us. And that is because many of them are workers who understand that the Tory government in Westminster is doing nothing for the workforce. And if we do not stand up to this, then all of us are going to continue to be on low wages. And what we want is for wages to go up. The bosses' profits are rising, so we want that to stop, and we want workers to get a fair deal. And so Scottish Labour will be behind the trade unions as we go through this dispute.
Right, and Gillian Mackay from the Greens, you're in government as well, your party's in government in Scotland. You can get a train home after about 8 o'clock in the evening in Glasgow. How can you be expecting people to be using clean and green transport if there are no trains?
I think as Carol alluded to, the public are very much behind the workers in this strike, and we fully support them as well. The RMT have done a fantastic job over the last few weeks, supporting not only their own workers, but workers' rights across the country. And on behalf of the Scottish Greens, I want to send our full solidarity to all of those who will be on the picket line tomorrow.
We've only got time for a quick sentence on what the First Minister will say on Tuesday with announcing her latest stage to an independence referendum. Gillian Mackay, what are you expecting from the First Minister? Just a sentence.
I'm expecting the First Minister to announce that independence referendum will be happening and that hopefully Scotland will be independent soon.
Carol Mochan from Labour, just a sentence.
I'm hoping that the First Minister will address some of the issues the workers need to be addressed at this time.
Craig Hoy.
I think we can expect more division and distraction from the First Minister. She doesn't want to talk about a record here in Holyrood, so she's throwing yet more red meat to her core support base, and in doing so, setting back the country.
And Jim Fairlie from the SNP.
Yeah, we're delivering on the mandate that the people of Scotland sent us to this Parliament to deliver, and we'll deliver that referendum. It will be an independent country.
You've all been good sports, thank you very much. Jim Fairlie from the SNP, Craig Hoy from the Scottish Conservatives, Carol Mochan from Labour, and Gillian Mackay from the Scottish Greens.